before we get to your previous album, I want to mention your Ragdoll video. You run through several different looks in terms of wardrobe and hairstyle. Why did you decide to take that more time-consuming and labor-intensive approach as opposed to just picking one and sticking with it?
Oh God, I don't know. You kind of go, oh, I'm bored of that outfit. No, I don't even know. My brother directed that video. We do a lot of work together. He's amazing, director, and so we had a very small budget, and we just had to kind of call friends with favors and, can I borrow this dress and this dress? And it was one of those things. We just threw it together.
Yeah, well, I remember, sometimes, well, for example, let's say you have a band like The Doors, and they do like Love Me Two Times. So they'll grab, a performance in Europe and the Hollywood Bowl, 3 or 4 different ones, and cut it together. So even though they're doing the same song in 4 different settings. So, it was that kind of feel, but it was almost, it was you every time. And this time it's black and white. Now it's in color. Now your hair's like this. Now your clothes are like that. What keeps it interesting, it keeps it moving around. I don't know why I should think this way, because it's not my labor, but I think, God, that looks like, if you would have just picked 1 or 2 of them, you could have saved yourself so much.
I know, energy, and I had to keep curling my hair, and it was August in New York City, though.
I don't get the impression that lack of energy is a problem for you, though. In fact, I was going to say you do a lot of dancing, not only in that one, but in pretty much all of your videos. We haven't gotten into your side projects yet, but from what I've seen about your gig with Rod Stewart, that job involves a lot of choreography. So do you have an actual dance background?
Yeah, I did ballet from age 5 to 14 or something. And then we lived in Westchester County, we moved to the Bronx. And then there just weren't really any dance schools in my neighborhood. So I just joined the chorus, and that was probably the beginning of the singing world for me. And, but I love dancing. I moved to the Bronx, and all my friends were Puerto Rican. So all of our parties were salsa dancing. And it was just, that was people's grandmothers would say, come, I'm teaching you how to dance right now. And so in high school, I salsa danced. That's like, I dream about salsa dancing and salsa music probably more than any other music. I'm definitely born in the wrong body, but it doesn't really come out in my music. I just love it so much.
It's nice to have something else in the toolbox. You're delivering music, you're a writer, you're a vocalist, but when these videos come on and has your name on it, you have to perform. So, a lot of people get camera shy and don't want to do that aspect of it. They're like, put someone else in the video. I don't even want to be in it, like Donald Fagen or something,
No, sure.
But yeah, you're like, okay, well, it shows that you're enjoying your own music too. That's important.
Yeah, for sure. And I always want to make people at least bob their heads. And I think that, because I took singing, so I started, taking singing so seriously, I was like, well, I'm just a singer. I'm not a dancer. I don't do this. But then I think because the music got I just got more relaxed with making music. And this is what I do. I grew up in New York City, and I'd go out to clubs, and I listened to a lot of house music when I was in the Bronx, and salsa music. And so I danced. I loved dancing until the sun would come up. But then I got my first gig as a singing dancer or dancing singer with Rod Stewart. And there was the first 5 days of rehearsal. I had to learn 28 songs in 5 days, plus the choreography to each song. So it wasn't just finger snapping or sitting in the background. You are full front and center in costume, kicking your legs, twirling, everything. And then I was like, wow, I forgot that I did this. I forgot that I do this. And it's one of my favorite parts of that job. I love dancing.
I think it was me. I wouldn't mind being a vocalist or a dancer, but the combination of the two, for example, like Michael Jackson, he would have, in the tour that didn't happen because of his death, he had people that were hired to dance and he had people that were hired to sing. When you have to do both, I got to believe you got to get winded.
Oh yeah, you have to build it up. It's true. It's true. I mean, he is a whole other level of, he sings and dances, and he obviously hires his people, as Madonna does or Janet Jackson.
Sure.
But I know that when we haven't done a tour with Rod for a couple of months, and then we get to sound check or rehearsal to start at the beginning of a tour, and I know that a few days before that, or maybe like a week before that tour starts, I start doing more cardio. I start running more, because there's nothing worse than being winded after song 6
Right.
and you have 2 hours to go, and I'm like, I'm completely out of breath because I didn't exercise or something like that. It's definitely a workout gig for sure.
Well, you'll see a lot of things. I mean, with dancers in top shape, where it gets to the end and they're all smiles and they're trying to hide it, but you can see that chest going.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's when you watch a video like Ragdoll, it's contagious. If you're having fun and making, if you're on stage, let's say at a live gig, dancing to your own stuff, the audience is going to be much more prone to dancing themselves.
Yeah,
you're setting the tone.
We hope.
Well, two of the songs on Hooked are remakes of tracks from the previous album, which makes a nice, tidy little segue. Mm-hmm. In 2008, you independently released Lucy Woodward is Hot and Bothered. You had a song called Slow Recovery on that one, and also a song that I'm going to play called Too Much to Live For, which I understand was inspired by your travels to some so-called third world countries that don't enjoy the same standard of living that we all take for granted. Before you address that, let me give the listeners a moment to hang their heads in shame. And now you may proceed.
So how did that song come about, you mean?
Yeah, it seems to be about sort of like, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself because I have so much. And
yes, this is taking it we take so much for granted. And I think I had just come back. My best friend grew up in Kenya, and I had been going to Kenya for now probably 20 years. And I think I had just come back from a trip, and maybe that was my third trip there by that point. And you come back and you see people screaming online at the Starbucks because their coffee is too cold or it's not hot enough. And you kind of go, what? And, all these priorities are all wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I came back preaching like it shouldn't, that's not, it's just you kind of check yourself when you don't want to stand in line and something takes too long, or you're on hold, with AT&T on the phone, everything just takes too long. You go to Africa, you go to any third world country, it's just, you spend all day at the doctor's office. I got a bite from trekking in Rwanda, on gorilla trekking. I got some kind of hive, a bite from some bug. And my whole face, everything swelled up. And the next day was the only time that I could go, or the only time they had time for me to go to the doctor and sit in a waiting room for 8 hours before I was able to even see the doctor. And that's just the way it is, So that was probably what one of those verses meant. But at the same time, that whole album I wrote with my ex-boyfriend, Tim Kay, who's an incredible producer, and also Ital Shore, who was one of my best friends, and we wrote a lot of songs together. He wrote the Santana Smooth song. Yeah. And we just Tim and I were living together. We did the whole studio, the whole record in our basement. And, it took a year and change to make. And Ital and I were at this stage where we said, let's just write a song a day and just see what happens. If we don't finish it, we don't finish it, but let's just challenge ourselves. And I kept on coming up with these, I had just been dropped from Atlantic Records, so my whole world was a little bit upside down. What am I doing next? And so Ital just said, enough of that, like, weeping on your pillow thing. Snap out of it. Let's write songs. But I found that, like, my heart was sad, so I was writing breakup songs, which I'm pretty good at. I actually really like. Even if I'm not in the middle of a breakup, I end up writing about a breakup song. I just know how to tap into it. But he was like, you're such a happy person, and you are excited about life and the world, and you're curious, and you travel. It's funny, you don't put that enough in your songs. Get over the last record deal, move on. It's time for new music. Let's rock. And he inspired me so much to do that. And he's like, and I was like, you're right. I got too much to live for. I'm not going to, it literally came out of conversation. Mm-hmm. So that's really where the beginning of that, it was, I think the opening line is, hello there, don't hang up before you get any ideas. And it's kind of like me calling somebody else to apologize for my behavior of being a freaking crybaby, basically.
Well, this is where you cross the line from music as entertainment to music as therapy. And believe me, songwriting, I have to say, my favorite instrument is the piano, and it's almost like a religious experience for me sometimes. It's a spiritual experience making music sometimes. It transcends like, ooh, I want to write She Loves You. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you do write something that or hear something that changes your outlook on life or makes a difference in your life, I mean, that's goes above and beyond the commercialism. I would say the one thing about music is you don't have to be a musician to be into music. You know, I think you almost kind of have to be a sculptor to appreciate sculpture, or maybe painting. Otherwise, you get bored looking at if you don't understand what really goes into it.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah,
totally
well,
agree.
This is a great example of that. I want to listen to it, and I also want to point out that if you're interested in hearing the jazzier remake that she did on her next album, Hooked, check that out as well. But from her 2008 Hot and Bothered CD, here's the original version of Too Much to Live For.
Cause I'm over it. You won't find me crying over something dumb. No, I got too much to live for. Cause hanging on to yesterdays ain't no fun. Oh, no, no. Cause I'm tired of singing the blues that ain't really blues. They're just bad, bad excuses. No, I'm tired of singing the blues that ain't really blues. They're just bad excuses. Oh, no. Just bad excuses. With no uses. Some bad, bad excuses. I got too much to live for.
Well, that's a cool song. I like both versions, actually, and a cool
Thank
album.
you.
I want to mention that the tune we opened the show with, Sugar Makes the World Go Round, can also be found on that album. Now, at this point in my research, as I told you, I was buying your albums in reverse order. You know, I knew I had plenty to work with what we've just spoken about, but I figured I should still go back and check out your first album, you know, the one that was released on Atlantic. The name of the album is While You Can. And honestly, my expectation was it would be maybe not quite as a developed or refined version of what you've done since then. So I was very surprised by the content of that album. It's more rock oriented. There's a lot of cool guitar work. It's more like a Sheryl Crow type album. A lot of energy and strong, tight material. It's very different, but I like it. For example, you got a song called "The Breakdown" where you start an argument with the Rolling Stones. I thought that was pretty ballsy.
Yeah, that was a record that it's pretty much my first record deal, and John Shanks produced the bulk of it, and he had done a lot of work with Sheryl Crow and Michelle Branch and Kelly Clarkson, and that was just what was going on in the world at that time. So I was writing a lot more pop rock songs on guitar, and they were probably, there's what's that quote? I don't know who said it, but your first record is basically the first 25 years of your life, and your second record has to be done in one, that kind of thing. Yep. So that was what that was. I'm proud of that record. It opened up a lot of doors for me in the music business, but also set me on the path to just kind of getting to know myself better. And as you can see, the next record, I went back to my more jazz soul roots and said, okay, I need to go back to what I'm, what I do, because my whole, after high school, I was, and college, and I was singing in bands and wedding bands and jingles and covered songs and jazz, singing jazz in coffee shops for tip jar and money and a bowl of spaghetti. And I was learning how to sing standards just by getting out there and doing it, and not being very good, but that's what I wanted to do. I knew that I just had to get out there and get good and just go to a bunch of singing restaurants and bars that no one knew me, and I'm just background music. And I did that for a while, young. I was 19 or 20. Then I got this record deal. I was writing these pop songs, and I got a record deal. But it was one of these things like, you're only going to be successful if you're on MTV or this radio station or that, or wear this, or lose 20 pounds by, the end of the month. And you fall into this world that's just not real. And obviously there are parts about the music industry that are just, many things have not changed. It's just harder to, people aren't buying records as much. And I appreciate you buying those records, by the way. Thank you. But so you say, oh, I have this idea, even, I want to try this. And they said, no, that's not going to fit into our format. We're not going to, no, the answer is no. Yeah. So then when he comes around the time to make your second record, you're like, I'm going to do all of those things that they said no to for this next record.
Well, two things happen with the labels. One, they sincerely think that their advice is good advice, and then the other thing that happened is they try and influence what you're doing just to justify their existence. You see this in films all the time. People, we're going to have a scene with bees. The movie doesn't need it, but if they're not in there doing something, the associate producer, you know what I mean? It's like they're telling you to do things just so they can go, hey, you see that track number 4, that was me who suggested that. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
They're just fiddling and tampering just to do it, or to just exert their power.
Yeah.
She thinks we're gonna show her. But yeah, that's pretty weak. But the nice part about it is, the upside is, there's a lot of cool music on there and some good players. You had Kenny Aronoff, Abe Laborio Jr.
No, I was so lucky. Pino Palladino. I was so lucky. Yeah, and one song he played on, he just happened to be in the building, and we said, let's get him on this track. So we did that whole record at Henson Studios in LA, the old A&M, and it's still, I live down the block from it, and it's just such a home for me. And Kevin Kadish did a couple of tracks on the record, and he wrote and produced a lot of country acts, and he wrote and developed Meghan Trainor, All About That Bass. So I feel like back then we were all sort of doing our thing, and everyone was, I just only hung out with, struggling writers and musicians and producers, and, it was such an amazing time.
Now, I know that some of the other tracks like Dumb Girls, Blindsided, Trouble With Me were kind of presented as the hits, but the one I want to play from it, so people can hear this variance from the stuff we've already heard, this is a nifty little rocker called Getting It On.
Let it slide.
So let's return from the past to the present and talk some more about the new one. I mean, the album title appears to be lifted from the lyrics of one of the songs. Why did you decide to call your latest song collection Till They Bang on the Door?
So many, it can mean so many things. But it did good eye, my friend. The song Never Enough has a lyric about, of course, struggling and getting over somebody, and the moment in the middle of the night where you're just sort of banging your head and not knowing how to get through it. And you could be playing music, blasting it loud in the middle of the night. You could be banging on the walls. You could be partying. You could be writing a song. Anything could be. You could be crying your brains out. Anything could be happening in that moment. And usually that's the hour when neighbors will bang on your door to tell you to lower your voice. But it's that kind of magical hour. You could have some kind of breakthrough. I like to look at it. I haven't really put it into words yet, but yeah, anything could happen in that breakthrough moment, whatever it is, where you make enough noise. Growing up in New York City, you're always concerned about the neighbors. That's just it. It's part of it. So you're like, don't play the music too loud. The landlord will yell at you. Or that neighbor below me, he always, hits his broomstick on his ceiling. So that's just kind of like living in New York. In Los Angeles, I live in a condo house. You don't have as many neighbors.
That's it.
So that's a very urban New York kind of lyric.
Again, you had a hand in the writing of most of the material, but there are some exceptions. The closing song, The World We Knew, Over and Over, dates back a ways. Frank Sinatra recorded it in 1967. So what made you not only want to record the song, but close the album with it?
I worked on this sequence for this album for a long time, and even at the very last moment, I changed it again. But I knew I always wanted to put that song last. I think just because it stood out on its own so much, and the strings, I kind of wanted to, if people were going to listen to it at night, for example, I wanted that to be the song to put them to sleep. Not that they were passed out from boredom, but just from like, that was more the lullaby. It's not a huge production. So that's why it was last. I just thought it was one of those just lullaby, melancholy lullaby kind of vibe. But that, I heard Frank Sinatra singing that. I don't know how I found this song in 2011 or so, and I said, I need to do this at my next gig. I think the first time I ever did it was with Snarky Puppy at their shows, and I'd never heard a woman cover it before. I think I heard one woman do it, but she changed the melody because it's kind of this 2-octave range where women don't naturally sing. I can't really explain it, but this is what I'm noticing and hearing other people do it, is that the way that melody was written was for a man, and maybe it was written for Frank, I'm not sure. But the way the vocal register works, it is so smooth from where he starts at his lowest note, over and over. It's his low, and then he gets to his highest note. And women's voices don't work as smoothly. That we have different, you have your chest voice, your mixed voice, your head voice. So I think it's harder for a woman to sing that song, and it's not an easy song to sing. I have to be really in good voice doing it, and so that was a challenge to me. And that was also why I wanted to do it. I just was like, it seems to be really written from a man's point of view, but women have the same feelings. Sort of, his point of view is such a different place than from where I was coming from, but it still meant the same thing.
Well, listening to what you were saying, that was, you said it yourself, but the word challenge, it sounded like you did it as a challenge. Also, it connects back to the earlier albums where you were doing a little bit less experimental things like Live, Live, Live. It was more like standards and stuff. I mean, you did Stardust. We didn't mention it, but you did Stardust on one of your albums. I mean,
yes.
Another cover on the album is Be My Husband, which was previously released by Nina Simone. And my God, let's talk about this video you made for that.
Yeah.
Here's a phrase I never thought I'd use in my life: fruit-themed blues. Here's another one: banana slide. So who had the idea of incorporating?
I forgot about that. So that song, I actually recorded it with Snarky Puppy in 2011 or 12. And then we said, let's just do a video, and we did this quick little video. And then I re-recorded it for this record. So the production is very, very different, but that is the video from an earlier version of it. So that's all Snarky Puppy in the video. And so the director, Simon Yu, he probably, had the idea of instead of using a slide, I need you to use a banana. And that was Astor Place in New York City. I actually forgot about that till now. I have to look that up. Amazing.
Well, incorporating fruits and vegetables, it's a very simple and inexpensive idea. You can go literally around the corner and get fruits and vegetables, but then you start to look for it. When you're in the kitchen with your knife chopping fruits and vegetables, you expect to see them. When a guy's playing his guitar with a banana, or when a horn player has grapes, or somebody is jammed in the saxophone, what's that, a melon?
Yes,
is that a
exactly.
pineapple? It's hilarious. Your character in the video has an affection for knives that adds a menacing subtext. Just hearing the song, "Be my husband and I'll be your wife, we'll be together forever," and that's great. And then you see this video of this, as you're saying that line, you have this kind of, creepy smile and this knife in your hand, and the guy can't see you. Like, as you mentioned before with Nelly's twist about changing up the lyrics on that song, having seen the video for that, is like, oh, maybe I don't want her to be my wife. Maybe I don't want to get, stabbed in my sleep. So, my God.
Exactly. The original, which I cut out these verses because there are so many verses to the song, but one of the verses that Nina sings is, I think it's like, keep the promise that you made me and that you'll stay away from Rosalie. And I didn't sing that. There were I just wanted to make it a little bit of a shorter song. I don't think I sang that on either. We either sang that on either version, because both versions of mine are duets. So the first one was with Maz, who's the trumpet player of Snarky Puppy, and the second recording is with Everett Bradley, who sang on the rest of the record as well. So I didn't want it to totally be driven home by, cheating and, that. So there were probably different reasons why I took it out, including time and where are we going to go with this song? But I think that the idea of that was inspired by the video. Like, you cheat on me, baby, I'm gonna kill you. That. So,
well, yeah. If I'm Everett, I'm like, okay, I'll sing on it, but I don't want to be in the video.